Well, thank you for showing up after the lunch. So really appreciate that. We're really looking forward to this session. Sustainable Development Goal is a call for action globally for communities to come together and show up more than business as usual, bringing communities together for an equitable future. And when myself and Carmen Santana was looking at all the submissions with Bilbao, it was amazing, mind-blowing, the amount of submissions we received. So it's very positive to see that there's good changes coming in the world. What you see in front of you, 3 finalists, and these 3 finalists have done a transformational projects, and this afternoon we would like to bring this together in front of you and share their journey with myself and the Bilbao Metropoli. So first, it will be yourself. So we have 3 finalist projects. First is Bogotá, Women and Care, and Isabella is going to share some information. So Isabella, stage is yours.
Well, thank you very much for having us. I think we have been building around the topic of gender-based approaches and urban planning, so I'm very excited to present you our project. Bogotá's care system is a gender-based approach public policy that has chosen to put unpaid caregivers at the center. It recognizes that unpaid care burden has fallen disproportionately on women. In Bogotá, currently, 30% of the female population perform unpaid care work. That's more than 1,200,000 women doing unpaid care work for as long as 10 hours, on an average of 10 hours per day. So this is like a big situation in Colombia and around the world, as we have been seeing lately. Hence, the care system seeks to achieve 3 Rs. First, recognize, then reduce, and finally redistribute care work. And we have chosen to do so by addressing time poverty, which is what caretakers face when taking care of others. They find themselves with no time for them, for their personal well-being, for their financial well-being. So we choose this approach. And what we do is that we created a system that provides intersectoral services for them and for their families. So, for example, a woman can go into a specific facility and can have recreational, income generation activities, health activities, while the system takes care of what the woman usually takes care of. So while she's doing these classes or activities, the system is taking care of the person she takes care of with professional services of assistance, with also leisure activities for teenagers, for the elderly, or for disabled people that are the people that we usually take care of. So here is where the project meets these 2 standards of gender equality by consolidating proximity areas in Bogotá, because we have chosen to repurpose and optimize already existing infrastructure. I think this is important because there were already buildings that some district sector were using for one purpose, and we said, okay, we don't have to build everything new, we just have to optimize and use what there's already and just coordinate institutionally to provide these new services for caregivers. So currently we have 23 blocks, which are facilities located in a range of 20 minutes, in a 20-minute range. We have care buses to go to rural areas or difficult access areas, and we have home assistance. And just to tell you about a little bit of our numbers, Since 2021, we have provided more than 4.5 million care services to more than 750,000 women and their families. More than 200,000 caretakers have enjoyed social and well-being activities. More than 42,000 women have graduated from high school, from complementary school, or have certificated their own knowledge. And at the end, one of the biggest things is the institutionalization of the care system. In 2022, the care system was institutionalized in Bogotá's urban plan for the next 12 years. In the women and gender public policy, and we have put forward a mechanism between the 12 districts, the 12 administrative entities and actors that take part of it. So
thank you so much for sharing that. So Francesco, would you like to walk us through the Green Refugee Camp in Cameroon? Thank you.
Sure, thank you, Farah, and good afternoon, everyone. This event has been talking a lot about urban environments, sustainability, regreening, climate action in urban environments. In our case, we are talking about temporary shelter for immigrants. Cameroon probably is in everyone's mind is not a place to receive immigration, but the reality is that in that region, there are places with even a worse situation. Although in Cameroon, the GDP per capita is only above 3,000 euro per year per person. We have people displaced from Nigeria and from Central African Republic with all sorts of problems. And also within Cameroon, there's displaced people. The Minawao refugee camp, which is where we had our Green Refugee Camp project, was designed for 15,000 people. All of a sudden went from 15 to 30 to 60 to 80,000 people. This carries a lot of problems, energy shortages, water availability, land degradation, decimation of grazing lands. So it's time to start talking about, the environmental sustainability and the well-being of the migrants living in a camp. The Green Refugee Camp is all about food, shelter, and environmental protection. 4 pillars in which one is from plastic and tarpaulin tents to mud brick shelters with a thatched roof, with a proper roof. From old cooking alternatives to eco-friendly cooking alternatives, having mud bricks to refractory mud bricks to have a more efficient cooking, having efficient cook stoves, and teaching the people how to make from biomass, from all sorts of organic residue, how to make briquettes for efficient fueling, so they don't need to harvest wood. Because the problem in these migrant camps is initially, and especially this is a problem for the women, they take all the wood that is in the immediate surroundings of the camp. But then that's fully deforested, there's nothing left, so they expand and expand and expand the need. And at the end, they need to roam for water and wood or fuel for 6 to 8 hours per day. So then we say, okay, let's reforest all the surroundings of the refugee camp. Let's plant 40,000 trees over 100 hectares, and those will provide, better infiltration of water to the groundwater wells, so they have availability for water. They will provide the biomass, fruits, shadow, more grass, and a better environment for those people. Obviously, a local autochthonous forest that will provide all those ecosystemic benefits, and this also mitigates the friction with the local communities, because otherwise all these people need to again roam around and grab food and wood from their local communities in the surroundings. This is a model that is replicable. According to our estimations, we could set this same model of green refugee camps in over 29 countries, helping more than 30 million people. I think this is just a milestone of a first example that with moderate investment, you can have a much more sustainable living for forced immigration.
Thank you so much. And Elok, could you please share with us your project, The Litter of Light?
So my first love really was building schools. So I'm an alternative architect. I design schools out of bamboo, soil, plastic bottles. And one of the things I realized when I was building schools is I would go to the electrical company and say, okay, built you 300 seats, no? Could you put an electrical line? And they would say, there's no business model for us to give you electricity. So I grew frustrated, so I started buying solar lights from India and China. And the big problem I would have was they would systematically break down. So people don't realize that these things are, have a limited life, and they break down on purpose. In fact, so scheduled that the guy would actually come back and say, are they broken yet? Would you like to order another one? So I said, how am I going to solve a 13 million people without light with something that was consumable and that you could throw away? Yes, great photographs, but then, and so what I started to do is I didn't invent solar, but I found out that there were solar cell production plants in my country, bringing it to China, making it in solar panels, and then sending it back. So I petitioned to get solar panels and make them into tiny lights, mobile charger, and street lights using LEDs from motorcycle, radio parts. And we were starting to do these lights that were lighting at homes. Now, what was interesting, as I found out that 35% of the money of that village was spent for power. They would buy petrol and then light it up in kerosene lamps. And so what I did was I started getting women to build lights and renting them out. I said, why do you have to spend so much money when, for a fraction of the cost? You don't even have to go to the city, like 3, 4, sometimes over rivers to get kerosene of drums. So this was the business model. The women would bring kerosene of drums and then sell it. And it was dangerous, toxic. And you can just buy solar. And for 30 minutes of work, you can light it up for the next 5 years. So then I was doing that. Now, what happened was really groundbreaking. We had the darkest moment in our history, Typhoon Haiyan, the first Category 5. 4 million houses destroyed, 10,000 people dead in 24 hours. And so we realized that people were living in not only energy poverty, so they were living inside tents without light. There was rape, so the women that would get from the aid, and they called me, and they said, do you have solar lights? So I said, let me call China if I can get it, or India. And they said, okay, don't worry. In 5 months, we'll put you in the order line, and then we will charge you 40% of your budget just to ship them over. So I said, why don't you just build it? So we arranged women. We don't have a factory, and we built it all by hand. And next thing you do, we had 7,000 lights for tents. And we realized it was cheaper, more efficient to just teach the people how to do it. Interestingly enough, we put the video online, and we got 60 million hits from around the world. People from all over the world said, you don't have to import from me, just follow this technology. And so we have 202 employees around the world where they teach women how to, instead of buying kerosene, save and build solar lights by hand, mobile chargers and street lights. And the business model where the women actually rent out the lights instead of selling kerosene or charge mobile chargers, and then they go around the village and then they keep the village lights open, reducing crime rate by charging people the street lights. So it became a business model that we help about 1 million people a year. So from the Philippines with simple technology, sometimes simple, repairable, but also scalable. I don't have to be there to scale it, not a single factory, but by the power of human hands, we can light up the world in clean energy. And at the same time, what's interesting is in 50 years, they might forget me, but they will have the technology to keep on lighting their villages. You always have to think about how to make yourself obsolete. The problem with solar is it becomes so poised to a seller or a technology that breaks down, and it's really cost effective to be able to help 700 million people around the world. Give the technology out there, they'll repair it, they'll replace it out of bamboo, out of pottery. I wanted to tell you very much about this really interesting thing that we did, which is
Light It Forward.
Light It Forward.
Yes.
Light It Forward was during the pandemic. And we realized, remember I was telling you about kerosene? Turns out tourists are the engine that pays for kerosene for villages. What happens when you don't have any tourists going to the villages so that they have money to buy kerosene? So villages were actually getting dark because there was no more funds. And so I remember, because I'm an older guy, and I remember this thing where you get this water and you throw it over your head and you challenge somebody else to do it. So what we did was we were able to buy parts from the warehouse and we put it in packages and we challenged people, if you could get 30 minutes of your time, build a solar light, and then challenge somebody else. Instead of us spending to promote it, they would challenge each other. We crossed 2,000 people challenging people, and then every time somebody challenges, we would send a bike messenger for them to make it. They would take a picture. And we realized, my gosh, we broke the first world record. It turns out that the world record was 2,000 solar lights in one place. So we put them all in one shot to show the power of people, and then before we gave it to the villagers. And we said, is this something that we can do around the world? And so we did it in Dubai. We challenged one school, instead of just doing it in mass, one person challenges one person, and we built the largest solar artwork in the world. And I'm going to India. We're doing it by the gate of India. So really interesting. Young people that you don't talk to, you just don't, hey, let's do a rock concert, change the world, see you next year. Young people want to be able to be transparent. They want to see that what they do. In fact, SDGs, if you don't feed people, if you don't provide a roof over their head, if you don't do something that will improve lives immediately after, then that's just motion. That's not even progression. You must be able to quantify your SDGs after your SDG program. So that's how we did it. We said, if we're going to change the world, we want to be able to do technology that people can replicate without us, young people can do, and at the same time become ambassadors. Many of our ambassadors, we found out in cities, are migrants. So after the big event, they actually brought the technology to their villages in Kenya. We just opened up Nigeria. We have Cameroon. We have Colombia. So young people are not just to be, youth washing. They can actually, with technology and skills, they can actually bring and make a difference with the SDGs. So that's it.
Thank you so much for sharing that. Three of you shared fantastic stories. I'm really curious, what are the challenges behind your fantastic stories? Because there's always hardships that we have to go through. Isabella, can I start with you? What are the major challenges you have faced?
Yes, of course. Putting together 12 administrative sectors with some around 33 entities was very challenging. So the coordination of different districts, different entities was very challenging, but also it was so successful. Everybody wanted to buy in and put their services in the care blocks, that at one point we have an offer of 92 services around the care blocks. So then the other challenge of organizing, reprioritizing, coming back to the people and to data to see, okay, what do we offer, why we are here, it was difficult. And the other one is connected with the information system. Now we have InfoCuidado, which is the information system of the care system. And it was challenging because we have the 33 entities with different information system, and we have to put together every single data set to be able to count the services that we were offering, to be able to see what we were offering, who was coming to the care blocks. So I think those were two of the main challenges we faced in our project.
So now you have a more integrated data system.
Yes.
The logistics, and the other one you mentioned was collaboration, right?
Exactly.
Amazing. Francisco, what are the key challenges that you...
Thanks, Farah. We could talk about the technical challenges and, on how...
Top three, maybe.
How planting and making trees thrive in an arid environment with degraded soil is difficult, but there are solutions for that. The biggest challenge we found was the resistance from the local communities, the local groups, the regional administrations, in their conception that if you give better shelter and better livelihoods to refugees, then they will stay for much longer, which is completely false, because refugees, whenever they have the chance, they go somewhere else. They don't stay in a refugee camp. They move on. The problem is that the influx of refugees from Nigeria, from Central African Republic, keeps on growing. Not the fact that they want to stay there because they have a better shelter and they have trees and more water around. That's completely so. And breaking that barrier, having the local Cameroonese communities understand that this was good for everyone, and this, if we would not improve the education, the facilities, the environment of the refugee camp, those refugees would need to really roam around much further distances and use the resources of the local communities at a much higher extent. That was really the biggest challenge by far.
So have your entity managed to break through that challenge?
Yeah, we managed at the end. They supported, they understood why this investment was necessary. But it was the hardest piece of all, stakeholder alignment.
Okay, thank you for sharing that. Elok, what was the biggest challenge in your journey?
Well, they did not believe that solar can be hand-built, replicated in scale. Doesn't matter if it's pottery, bamboo, that women can cut. So basically the solar cells are 5 watts. We taught the women to use lasers to cut them into 2 watts and then to do it by hand. So hand-built solar, that the green economy should not be in China or India only, but you can actually create, weavers can become, if they don't have enough sales, they can become, solar weavers. Pottery that are losing money for plastics can now convert their skills into solar products. That green jobs, it's not about people just being subsidiaries and selling solar that breaks down, but it can be institutionalized to build. So one of the things that we built is we started building, these solar lights in the villages. Now, one of the most difficult ones is governments that, or let's say, sometimes corporates, in goodwill, they dump large amount of solar lights, buy one, give one. They just dump the amount of solar lights, not thinking that it's like shoes, no? You just give free shoes, but you destroy the whole industry of the people making shoes. So here we are teaching people how to fix, repair solar, go to the city, buy the parts. And then here's this huge amount of solar lights that will last for only a year and a half or 2 years, completely wiping out this micro industry, these green jobs. And so we have to pull out, and by the time they're broken, there's nobody that can continue the business. So it destroys this business. The other thing also is that the government prefers to invest in large amounts of donated lights, so street lights, mobile chargers. But in 2-3 years, lithium ion is 4 years if it's good, but they all break down. So solar should be a match between, yes, you can buy from China, but understand that it's consumptive. It will break down. Solar will not last for the next 25 years. The battery breaks. So we're saying invest in the people to be part of the clean energy revolution. When we do this kind of world records, help us make aware to the children that not everybody has lights. The reason we did it in the city is because young people don't even know that there's 700 million people living in energy poverty, and they can do something about it. So we're very excited about people-based approaches because they will last much longer than me. They say that the purest form of any SDG or any charity is that it will last beyond us. It can do without the original founder, because that is the problem. The founder disappears, the whole thing dies. So SDGs are long-term, they're big numbers, and you would like to get as many people that has the technology and skills that can make you obsolete. I would like to be obsolete.
Thank you. Isabella, I want to come to you about the cultural transformation workshops that you run as part of. Can you just share with us why you started that and what's the impact and influence you've seen of these workshops?
Yes, of course. If you remember, we have our goal of the 3 R's. First, recognize care work, then reduce, and then redistribute. So I think we were very successful in the first R, recognize care work. People and women were getting aware of their work or the important work they perform in society and how society should also pay in a way back some of it. We were being able to reduce some of the time they were investing in care work by facilitating care activities, by, for example, women were able to go and use a washing machine instead of wash by hand all of the family clothes. So we were very successful in those 2 R's, but let's be real. The real thing is the transformation that comes around and enable us to redistribute care work between society and mostly women and men. So we realized from the beginning, but now we are putting more effort into that cultural transformation was the key into making it sustainable. So inside the care system, we put forward some transformational workshops. They can be attended by women,
Give us
men.
an example. That would be
Exactly.
good.
Yeah, they can be attended by women, men, and there are different kinds. But for example, you can perform practical activities on how to change the diapers of a baby. Sometimes men don't know that. So where these small things that how to perform care work began through these workshops, and also, for example, another important workshop that I would like to mention is emotional management workshop. So all of these things that allow us to really transform society into a more gender equal society were the things that we started to put forward, and we are pushing more and more because we are not just a system that provides services. We are like a public policy project with a gender-based approach that seeks to transform society.
Thank you so much. So what you just mentioned is really very interesting. So what's next? Like, if you had a final piece of wisdom to give to another city and to replicate what you guys have done, what is the advice that you would give them? If you could highlight 2 or 3 key lessons and points, that would be really appreciated.
Sure. I think this is not a copy-paste model. This is not something that you can implement around just like that, but definitely the gender-based approach. When you study gender, they teach you to have this gender lens, gender focus. Let's ask different questions. We can do sometimes the same thing, but if we ask different questions when being faced, for example, with urban planning, okay, who uses this, who's the person behind that, and then you realize, oh, the person in this case is a woman, in this other case is a man, what that means. So I think the gender-based approach of making the right questions is the replicable part of the model. Also sharing knowledge of our failures and our successes has been central to our project. And finally, I think one of the most interesting things is how a political and an ethical commitment can be mixed with like these technical and very planned tools into put forward a project. So the mixture between politics and ethics from the gender approach and a feminist approach, and then these practical tools that enable you to have then
Give us an example of that, the last point that you said. Can you give us an example of how you've done it?
Yeah, from the beginning, the system, like if you put forward a care system based on gender, that's a political approach. That's a political goal that you have, and you have put it forward. But then you have to use the tools. You have to talk to people. You have to do surveys to talk to women what they need. You have to build this trust with the community. So you have to, at the end, use all these also technical tools to put forward your ethical goal. So you mix those, and you will have a very powerful tool that will last.
And do you think how you guys have done it in Bogotá, that worked positively for your community?
Yes, definitely. We have seen the results. People and women, they're in love with the care blocks. They come, they keep coming. It's been a success in terms of the services that we provide. And we think that the cultural transformation is beginning to get ignition.
Thank you, thank you. Ilok, I will come to you now. You've talked about solutions and challenges. So if you were to give 3 pieces of advice to any other city to replicate or take these learnings from you, what would your advice be to that city?
So the first one is to give voice to the invisible. 10% of the city here is migrants. Many of them have lived in times where they did not have light. They understand this. Many of the people that these migrants interact with don't even know that that they had a substantial amount of time where they didn't have access to electricity. I'm part of the UNESCO International Day of Light. It's the youngest campaign to tell people about poverty, but also to gather people to solve that poverty. It's education and science. And so the other thing also is that there's many people here that they send a lot of their money back home to be able to tackle climate change or refugees. There's the more number of people now moving without houses than even World War II. So there's many people that don't have access to light. And this kind of replicable, community-built solar lights are something that they can do, repair, and scale. Regardless, it's not like, give me money and I will help people. That's the worst thing you could do. It's like, give people the capacity and they will replicate it and scale it even without you, if that makes sense. And we do this all over the world. We started with 100 solar lights in Brazil, in Manaus, and these young people have now scaled it to 7,000 lights, all along the river of the Amazon. So the power of youth is not in showing up. The power in youth is converting that into action. And sometimes when you don't give them the technology, when you just talk to them and you just, you say, see you next year, or just give them a PowerPoint, the NGOs actually lose volunteers because they don't believe anymore that you're giving them the solution. So don't recognize the story. So when we have these big stories, recognize the unheard voices. Amplify that there are people here that could tell their story of living without light, living without the SDGs. The second one is don't fool the youth. And the third one is, when they say change the world, they never explained to me how big it was. So the most important part is do something whereby you empower people to go long after you. And so that's why we're technology-based, we're youth-based, is because this formula will change the world. Never underestimate the power of young people wanting to make the world a better place.
Thank you so much. Francesco, you guys have done a really good job with the green refugee camp, and there's a lot of challenges you've come across. So what would be your message to the world because the refugee is a big crisis across the globe, so if you had 2 or 3 words of wisdom and advice to give, what would that be?
Yeah, and I think, and like Isabella, it's not fully replicable because each case has its own particularities, but first advice would be ready for lengthy and extensive stakeholder consultation. That aligning of all the groups takes a lot of time and a lot of effort in these sort of projects. Second would be, and in this case, paraphrasing ILAC, technology works and technology helps. And for example, we had to use this cocoon, this biodegradable shelter for the trees to make sure they would survive in the first years in these degraded arid areas. So technology is something we need to use. And third, I think education and job creation is the tool that really breaks through those groups or those people who can oppose projects like this in general. So if you really work hard in educating, not only the young, but everyone, and then you really manage to end up convincing too. And the job creation is really instrumental. In this case, the Green Refugee Camp favored, between the nursery, the bricks and briquettes, and the biomass usage, and all these activities we had to do. It really helped create nearly 200 jobs.
Did you bring external trainers to train people, or how did you?
Both external and local. So we first need to train local trainers to train the locals. But it's a combined, a joint effort, for sure.
Thank you so much. I would really like to take the opportunity to thank you, all the panelists. It's been really, it was amazing to read through your reports and to see the amazing work you've done. And I'm so happy that today you got to share it with the audience, the amazing work that all of you are doing. So thank you so much it takes a lot of resilience to do what you guys are doing. So thank you so much for being here with us, and thank you, audience, for being with us after lunch to be part of this conversation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.